Okay, so we are going to get started. Thank you so much for being here with us today. My name is Elizabeth Aloni, and we are pleased to present surprising ways you can help hungry New Yorkers in need. I'm with Schneps Media. Schneps Media is the largest local media company in the New York area. We publish over 80 newspapers, magazines, websites, webinars, podcasts, and events throughout Queens, Brooklyn, Manhattan, the Bronx, Staten Island, Westchester, Long Island, the East End, Philadelphia, and Palm Beach, Florida. So thank you for being here with us today. You know, despite living in a city of immense wealth, more than 1 million New Yorkers are going hungry, and 1 in 5 children don't have enough to eat. Many families must choose between paying bills and buying food. And thankfully, there are effective nonprofits fighting hunger throughout our region. This giving season, you're going to learn today how to connect with these nonprofits to give back and share your bounty today and for future generations. So I'm thrilled to introduce our panel. First, please welcome New York Community Trust President Amy Freitag. Amy, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Elizabeth. It is such a thrill to be here, and thanks to everyone on this webinar today. You know, I really can't think of a better way to spend Giving Tuesday than being here with you today and with generous trust donors, the Levins, and my 2 brilliant colleagues, Irfan and Chantella. And I'm really excited to have this time together to discuss how we as New Yorkers can be there for one another and make sure that no one goes hungry. A little bit about me. I've served as the president of this amazing organization, the New York Community Trust, for about 1.5 years. After a long career in New York City nonprofits and government, I served as a deputy commissioner for parks during the Bloomberg administration. And after that, I served as executive director of Bette Midler's New York Restoration Project, where I helped plant 1 million new trees in New York City and care for community gardens in all 5 boroughs. Most recently, I served as executive director of the J.M. Kaplan Fund, a longstanding New York City-based family foundation. So just thrilled to be here. Thank you so much.
Phenomenal. Thank you, Amy. Next, please welcome New York Community Trust Deputy Vice President for Grants, Irfan Hasan. Please share a little bit about yourself, Irfan.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And also, like Amy, I am thrilled to be here. So I've had the pleasure of working at the Trust for about 23 years in a variety of grant-making roles. Currently, I oversee our Healthy Lives grant-making portfolio, which includes health, behavioral health, and biomedical research, and some of our social service-related work. I also work on what we call our designated grants, where donors leave money to the Trust, but name particular institutions to receive that money forever and ever, as long as they continue to do what the donor had wanted them to do, and they continue to meet the Trust standards on due diligence. And before I came to the Trust, I worked in Boston at a nonprofit that got people with disabilities and other health problems back to work.
Wow, that's really wonderful work. Thank you so much. Next, please welcome the New York Community Trust Program Officer, Chantelle Mitchell. Chantella, please tell us about yourself.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Chantelle Mitchell. I am the Trust's Program Officer for Community Development, Housing, and Human Services. I joined the Trust this year, and prior to coming to the Trust, I was in several public service roles at the New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development, as well as at the Mayor's Office, and most recently worked as an executive director in the Office of Development at the Department of Housing Preservation and Development. So I'm very excited to be at a place like the New York Community Trust that is addressing so many of the critical needs in our city.
Thank you so much, Chantella. And finally, I'm thrilled to introduce Trust donors Anna and Peter Levin. Welcome. Please tell everyone a little bit about yourselves.
Hello, we're happy to be here too. Well, I guess we're here because we started a donor advised fund at the Community Trust in 2021 because we hadn't been involved in charitable giving, you know, kind of around the kitchen table with organizations that we had one way or another become aware of, but we wanted to support that charitable giving in New York with the substantive and administrative resources that the Trust could bring. We each are lawyers, but have gotten over that. We worked for many years in law firms, but Peter launched a new career in education when he became an elementary school teacher and was a founding teacher at the Peckslip School in Lower Manhattan near the South Street Seaport. Has been doing that for what, 10 years, longer? And I got involved in community activism, was a member of Manhattan Community Board number 4, which is Hell's Kitchen and Chelsea, and then got appointed to the New York City Planning Commission, which I left a year and a half ago. So, and I guess we're here because a big chunk of our giving that has been supported by, aided and abetted by, encouraged by the Trust has to do with feeding New Yorkers in need.
And thank you for all you do, really. So Amy, can you tell us a little bit about New York Community Trust and how you work to help hungry New Yorkers?
Well, it's my pleasure to do that. The New York Community Trust is a community foundation that was created by New Yorkers for New Yorkers. Our sole purpose is to make life better in the 5 boroughs, Westchester and Long Island. So together we're 8 counties strong, stretching from the lower Hudson Valley all the way to the east end of Long Island, and we're serving over 12 million New Yorkers. So as a community foundation, we have this 2-part mission. On the one hand, we take in and steward funds from individual donors like the Levins who want to support their community and make grants to local nonprofits. And then we make grants, and you'll hear more about Chantella from Chantelle and Irfan about the grants that we make with those stewarded funds. So those are the 2 halves of our mission. And so part of making life better in our communities means ensuring that people have affordable, nutritious, and culturally appropriate food to eat, both for themselves and for their families. Now, we all know that when you're hungry, everything gets harder in life. Kids have a harder time learning. Adults have a harder time working. It's harder to heal. It's harder to thrive. And so you quoted that devastating statistic, Elizabeth, that 1 out of 5 kids in New York City are going hungry. And we worry that that number actually understates the need, given the massive influx of newcomers to New York City over these past 6 months, over the past year. And so we know that the high incidence of hunger is inextricably tied to poverty, and that's why so many of our grants end up relating to food. Grants that build urban farms, grants that provide jobs for people in public housing, grants that assist people to apply for public benefits, healthcare, childcare, and food stamps. So the sad fact is that billions and billions of dollars of public benefits go unclaimed by New Yorkers. So we can help do things like help folks get access to those unclaimed benefits. Unfortunately, as you said, New York has an incredible nonprofit infrastructure that supports millions of our neighbors, and they're effectively addressing many of these issues. But to do that, they rely on the generous donors that come to the Trust, like the Levins. And our job at the Trust is to connect those generous donors with those incredible nonprofits on the ground who are addressing hunger and the myriad other needs that New Yorkers facing poverty are experiencing.
Wow, it's a huge problem, and there are so many components to it. I think that's also something that stands out to me with New York Community Trust, that there are so many different ways you can help. So Chantelle and Irfan, can you share with me the process you take to support the battle? It really is a battle to eradicate hunger in New York. And can you give us some examples of the programs you fund? You know, Amy mentioned so many different ways to be able to help.
Great, thanks, Elizabeth. I'll start and sort of just give a big overview of what our work in food and hunger looks like from the Trust. Like the many different areas that we have at the Trust, we have 16 different program areas. Our work in food and hunger generally focuses on projects that look to do 4 things: either promote change in policy or systems, help build the capacity of nonprofits in that sector, food and hunger in this case, test innovative solutions to new or long-standing challenges, and obviously expand and improve services. And our food and hunger related grant making, because food and hunger issues don't just sit in one silo, they affect people across the board in different ways, kind of straddle our work that we do both in health as well as social services. And we have 2 broad goals in how we try to address these really monumental issues. Our first strategy is really to decrease food insecurity, which is not having enough access to food, and improve the emergency food distribution systems that are in the city. And New York is fortunate to have somewhat strong systems in that area. Our second strategy is to advance a better nutrition system and improve food equity. Essentially, the framework that we use to make sure that New Yorkers not only have access to food, but have access to good food. And we try to get to these two very, very broad goals by making grants that try to reduce the disparities, health disparities between low and high income neighborhoods caused by a lack of healthy and affordable food, by engaging residents in efforts that encourage physical activity and healthy diets, and perhaps most importantly, by supporting research, policy, and advocacy that directs resources to help alleviate hunger and move individuals to economic stability and independence. I'm going to hand it over to Chantella, who can give some real examples of the types of grants that we make.
Thank you, Irfan. Yes, I'm excited to highlight just a few of the initiatives that the Trust has supported recently in partnership with our generous donors and the fantastic teams at some of New York City's nonprofits who are really working every day to ensure that our neighbors are well fed. First, the Trust recently made a grant to the Mayor's Office of Food Policy, and this was to improve New York City's emergency food system. So grants like this really speak to the systemic impact that Irfan mentioned. And while this grant is specifically funding a pilot to help soup kitchens and other food distributors more efficiently purchase and distribute food, the Department of Social Services is already using learnings from this pilot to create efficiencies throughout its system, throughout the city, which is really exciting. We also recently made a grant to the City University of New York's Graduate School for Public Health. And this is to advocate for healthy, sustainable, and equitable food production, and really making that connection in New York City, as well as in Westchester and Long Island, through where we're getting our food and how it's ending up on our plate. So thinking more sustainably and equitably about food production. Speaking of advocacy, we also recently partnered with the Metropolitan Council on Jewish Poverty and City Harvest in their efforts to both provide actual food and to advocate for improved food systems in the aftermath of the pandemic. So in addition to providing New Yorkers with tens of millions of pounds of food, including lots of fresh produce, the Met Council also advocated for increased kosher and halal options. And City Harvest actually worked with its partners to create and expand Plentiful, which is a digital pantry registry that you can actually download as an app right on your smartphone and see where there are those emergency food sources available. Finally, in an effort to reduce food-related health disparities, as Irfan mentioned, we are working to support efforts in neighborhoods that have limited access to nutritious food. So especially in the light of reductions of public benefits and restrictions on what folks are actually allowed to use their food stamps or SNAP benefits on, some examples of addressing this food disparity and health disparities are a recent grant to Help USA, which is a supportive housing provider throughout the city. And we are working with them to bring farmers markets, community gardens, nutrition classes, as well as community supported agriculture to residents at 5 different supportive housing sites in East New York, Brooklyn. Help USA will also help residents access public food benefits, as well as go through those nutrition classes. And finally, we recently made a grant to the Sylvia Center, which is a nonprofit that educates young people on the connection between food and health. So with our support and partnership, the Sylvia Center will be creating a nutrition education program specifically for low-income young people on Staten Island.
Wow. I mean, the number of different ways that can help to eradicate hunger. It's not just about giving food, but it's really about creating sustainability over the long term. And, you know, that's what New York Community Trust is doing. That's really phenomenal. Thank you for giving a sense to us of that. Anna and Peter, I'd love to hear about your journey with philanthropy and how New York Community Trust has assisted in ensuring that your donations support programs that align with your values specifically.
Great, thanks. Well, we start with a pre-existing interest in food insecurity in our neighborhood and in the city as a whole. And we have given money in that regard for a while. We came to the conclusion that we needed to be a little more comprehensive in how we went about it. And the community trust offers, as Amy mentioned, donor advised funds as a vehicle. And a donor advised fund, you put a certain amount of money into the fund, you then advise the community trust on how it should be spent. The community trust does due diligence to make sure that the ways in which you wish it to be spent are appropriate. So far, we haven't been voted down on anything. And then the funds are released by the community trust to the organization. So that we thought was an excellent vehicle. Not only for that reason, you get a tax deduction when you give the money, but because the community trust had access to more information than we did about possible places to which we could devote our philanthropy. We started with a core group of organizations we already knew. There were other ones we knew about, but didn't know enough about, that we asked the community trust about. And there were still others that the community trust told us about that we hadn't known about. And from those three baskets, we pulled together a portfolio. Anna can tell you more about the specific institutions to which we've given funds.
But we should also mention that our strategy has been to give unrestricted money to all of these organizations, not tie any strings to it. We believe, if we believe enough in an organization doing good work, we have to have confidence that they'll figure out the best way to use the money. So we give unrestricted grants, and we really hope to be developing relationships, not sort of in your face relationships, but we intend to continue to support the organizations that we're working with over a longer period of time, because they need to know that they can count on us.
Anna, can you just share with us a little bit about what you mean by unrestricted? Because I think maybe not everyone that's with us today knows what that it means. I mean, I'm not 100% sure. So if you could share a little bit with us about that, what that means when you're giving in that manner.
Well, I think it means that, for example, the Food Bank of New York City, is a giant organization. It is one of the 4 leading largest food redistribution organizations. They distribute food, but they also support local food banks in neighborhoods across the city. We would give them an unrestricted grant, and they might turn around and use it to put a new refrigerator in a food bank in Brownsville. I don't even know if that's a thing. I just made it up. But I think our approach to philanthropy is that we have to have we don't want to give it to them and restrict it to a purpose that is not central to the work that they're doing. We really are investing in organizations and not in individual projects.
Yeah, stepping back more generally, when people give restricted funds, it means that they give funds that have to be used for the purpose that they designate. If they give unrestricted funds, it means they can be used for whatever the organization thinks is most important at that time.
Great, thank you for the clarification. And I think also that is where New York Community Trust comes in terms of developing your trust in the organization. I mean, some of them obviously you already know, but they, I think that's also a concern a lot of people have, is that, there's so many things that are people that are asking for money, and where are the places that are really doing the important work? So you can feel comfortable in being unrestricted in that way. Thank you. So, I mean, obviously your giving has benefited, so many from you and your family's generosity, but, can you speak to also about how you've personally benefited from your giving?
Well, I think it comes largely from the satisfaction of knowing that we're helping to support our wider community. I think especially through my work on the community board and the city planning commission, I deeply believe that New Yorkers are a web of different neighborhoods and communities all tied together. We're fortunate enough to be able to be in a position to help. We wish hunger would be eradicated. We wish that government policy would do more to mean that people don't have to be hungry, but in the meantime, there are people that are hungry. And being able to put a little bit in the bucket is an important way of contributing. You know, and there's, you know, I was listening to the Brian Lara's show this morning and heard Kirsten Gillibrand, who comes on every month to talk about whatever anyone wants to talk about. But one of the things that was mentioned is the stress that food organizations are being put under from the immigrant crisis. Okay, well, we got started doing this when COVID was the thing, and now we're pivoting into increased stress on food, you know, people addressing food insecurity from yet another crisis. Well, we're all in this together and have to help each other.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for that. Amy, I know that you have some great stories about donors who are helping hungry New Yorkers, and I love to hear about these. Can you share a few with us?
Oh, I'm always thrilled to talk about our wonderful donors, and you know, just hearing just Anna and Peter's perspective on trust-based philanthropy and being so personal in their giving. I think that's really what the magic of community foundations, you know, really is. It's this crazy quilt of generosity of individual donors like the Levins just kind of wrapping around the city in a very personal way, wanting to change people's lives. And we're about to celebrate our 100th birthday next year. So you can imagine we've worked with generations of New Yorkers who have given to the city and their neighbors in that way. And, you know, it's an extraordinary thing to get to see, to match these stories of people to the recipients. It's really one of the coolest parts of our jobs. But you know, so we have donors that have, you know, made a memorial gift. I think of a family named the McPherson family who tragically lost a daughter at 15 in a car accident. And when Mr. McPherson passed away, in his will, he left us a fund to memorialize his daughter that is called the Janet H. McPherson Memorial Fund for Children. And the fund was really established to address childhood hunger. And that's allowed us to make grants each year for these 30-some years in honor of his daughter. And I'll just give you an example, some of the grants that we've been able to make with this memorial fund. You know, as many of our listeners know, until fairly recently, New York City public school kids had to either pay for their lunch or fill out paperwork that documented that their family was too poor to send them to school with lunch. And as you can imagine, that created such a stigma, right? What an embarrassment to be one of those free lunch kids. So as a result, a lot of kids just did not access food at school, which is such a critical link for families that are in need. So thanks to this memorial fund, we made grants for 5 years in a row to a great New York City-based nonprofit called Community Food Advocates. And that's really addressing the policy work around food that Anna mentioned, and what Irfan mentioned as a key strategy is trying to work on from a policy perspective to make more food accessible. And with their help, they successfully landed the campaign to make all lunches free to all 1.1 million New York City school kids, which meant all of those kids that weren't getting access to food are now getting access to those critical needs. So a really amazing win, but it didn't just stop there. We also have used that memorial fund with that same grantee to get an additional $25 million allocated to the redesign of schoolroom of lunchrooms in high schools and middle schools across the city, making them so much more attractive and appealing to kids, more nutrition based, and that increased the participation by 35% of kids accessing food. So there's just been amazing work we've been able to do with the McPherson Fund, and you know, they gave us that money very specifically for childhood hunger. But I also just want to call out, there have been funds, and I'll call out an amazing fund, the Anne Lenhart Fund for the Needy. Sometimes people just give us fund and say, Irfan, when I'm gone, I want you to use this money for whatever the greatest need is for needy New Yorkers. And often that's hunger, right? But it allows us to be agile and nimble to respond to issues like the pandemic and a myriad other sort of unprecedented things like this migrant crisis in New York City. So it's a combination of all these funds that are allowing us every year to make grants to support hunger and all kinds of issues related to poverty in New York City.
Wow. I mean, there's just so many things. I know I used to eat chocolate chip cookies for lunch in high school. It's good to see that there are better options for kids. and the health component. I mean, I see the difference in my local high schools and middle schools as well with what's going on, but taking away that veil of shame from children so that they can access that food. I mean, again, something you don't think of when you're thinking of how can you help hungry New Yorkers. And there are just so many ways that through New York Community Trust Fund, you can open the pathways to all the different ways that you can help. So, I would love for, Amy, Chantella, Irfan, if you could recommend to someone who wants to get started, they want to help the hungry in New York, what would each one of you recommend that they do? And Anna and Peter, I would love to hear, from your perspective too, because it can be overwhelming. There's so much need that people can get lost in it. So if each one of you would share with me a little bit about, what you would recommend, I think that would be very helpful. You want to get started, Irfan? You want to?
Sure. Come talk to us, I think is really the core message. We are here for New York, for New Yorkers, as Amy mentioned, both folks who are interested in giving, as well as those who are working at nonprofits and looking to meet food need in this case. So email us, talk to us, and we're happy to help. I know there are a few people on the call here who are at nonprofits that are doing this really, really important work. One of the really nifty things about the trust is that we accept applications from organizations 24/7. And I really mean that 24/7, because I'm the one who goes in the morning to see what wasn't there at 9 p.m. and what is there at 6 a.m. And people do submit. So submit your proposal. We're pretty easy to submit. And, a lot of ideas come to us in terms of where you should give to from organizations that just submit, new organizations, smaller organizations, and all sorts of organizations.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. Chantella, would you like to share some of your thoughts on this?
Sure. So in addition to Irfan's recommendation, which I wholeheartedly agree, talk to us, I think another great idea is to talk to the people in your community who may already be doing different work around food security and hunger. I thought that Anna's example of the food bank was really great. They are a grantee of our competitive grants program, but they also work with a network of providers who provide food as well as other types of social services all throughout the city. And I know sometimes people may wonder, is it better to give money or to give food? And I think the food bank's model is a really great example of the value of providing financial resources, because they actually use a choice system throughout their network where people can, similar to a Fresh Direct or something else, actually go in and select the different grocery items that they and their family prefer, as well as that they actually use. So nothing's going to waste, and people are really preserving that dignity of having the choice of the food that's culturally relevant and that they and their family will enjoy. So I think getting connected with big organizations like the food bank is a great way to find out who they're working with that might be really right there in your neighborhood.
Great, thank you for that. And both of you said about reaching out. I did share New York Community Trust contact information. You can go to send an email to giving@nyct-cfi.org and the phone number there. And I'll be sending out an email tomorrow as well with this information. But Anna and Peter, can you share your advice to those who are interested in helping hungry New Yorkers?
If you're just starting out, look at the website. Look at the Community Trust website. It is just published a food-related giving guide online. You can take a tour of the whole topic online that will help give you some direction, some sense of what you'd like to do. And then you can talk to the human beings, at the trust.
Yeah. We also started in our own neighborhood. We, first felt a strong responsibility for our neighborhood, which is Hell's Kitchen or Lincoln Square, depending on whether you're looking north or south. And despite being, very wealthy neighborhoods, there's pockets of extreme poverty all up and down the west side. So we'd long known about the soup kitchen at the Church of the Holy Apostles. We'd known about the West Side Campaign Against Hunger, and they all have websites. They all describe the work they're doing. You can fall down a rabbit hole following from one organization to the next, if you have the appetite for that, and learn about the ecosystem of support organizations there are across the city. And then Peter's right, what we did after that was to, after we started our fund, was to lobby in an inquiry. And I didn't know these folks at the Community Trust, didn't know if they, the people on the program side were going to be responsive to individuals like us. And I said, this is what we're looking to do. Do you have any ideas? And got on a Zoom call with Irfan and a couple of his colleagues and got the names of 3 or 4, actually more, dozen organizations from which we did our own research and made grants to neighborhoods far beyond our own, where we had learned there were organizations doing innovative and great work.
Wonderful.
A couple of those were Project Eats, which runs farms and a pantry in Brownsville and on Randall's Island, and the Campaign Against Hunger, not to be confused with the West Side Campaign Against Hunger. The Campaign Against Hunger is a Brooklyn-based food distribution center with urban farms and a Green Teens workforce program that seemed appealing to us. So there are a zillion of these organizations out there, and you can't, you feel like, oh, I got to pick the perfect one, but you know what? They all have need. You can also, if you're really into doing research, all these organizations have to file an annual tax return. It's called the Form 990, and those are publicly available, and you can use them as a way to understand, how big these organizations are, where they spend their money, where they do their work. Anyway, and I would add on to what Amy was talking about, the Memorial Fund. It occurred to me, one of the reasons for setting up a donor advised fund is that when we're gone, if our children aren't interested in taking over it as advisors, which you can do with a donor advised fund, the fund will be there to carry on with our interests. So another advantage to a donor advised fund. The trust will be there to carry on our interests.
Fantastic. Fantastic. I mean, look, certainly there's a lot to learn if you want to dig deep into all of this. And then there's also, where Irfan and Chantella, can be able to guide you if that's overwhelming to you as well. So thank you for that. That was some great advice. Amy, please share with us your advice for those that want to help.
It's hard to do better than the Levins and Irfan and Chantella, but I'll make a pitch for just amplifying this thing that we should not be the best kept secret in New York. This kind of expertise is available to all New Yorkers, right? Do reach out if you have a passion for giving, and we'd love you to give in this area of hunger, because obviously we've talked about today, the need is so great, but we really give grants across the full landscape of need in these 8 counties. So I like to say, there's not a topic we haven't deeply studied in these 8 counties, and the depth you've heard today about hunger. Just get Chantella started on housing. She has a lot, and housing and hunger both feel like these insurmountable, huge topics. How could my contribution possibly make a difference? But it is buying the refrigerator for the for the Brownsville food pantry that could be a fundamental game changer for a small community-based organization. And these really smart colleagues of mine are here to help you make the maximum impact with your precious dollars. But I will just also amplify what the Levin said. We're not going to let you make a mistake. Every one of our grants goes through a process where we look at the 990s, and we really try very hard not to let someone ever make a bad grant. So we are a resource for you, and we are just so grateful to be in this conversation with generous New Yorkers year after year, and we're going to be here for the next 100 years too. So we're in it for the long haul, and we're grateful for everybody's participation and support.
That's phenomenal. Thank you so much for that. And I do want to just mention too, because one of our past webinars, we talked about, you don't have to be a millionaire to give like one. And I do want to say, because, sometimes I hear these, and you just, like you said, feels insurmountable, or you feel like, well, I don't have a lot of money, but it doesn't have to be a lot of money. We even had a conversation about getting your kids involved, even if it's just some of their allowance every week, but, being able to get into that mindset of giving at any level. Like you said, whether it's a refrigerator or what it is that you're giving is critical. And so valuable for the organizations, and as Anna and Peter said, for yourself as well. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think sometimes people think it's only the Rockefellers and the Schiffs that built the New York Community Trust, but it's not about that. It's really about the village of donors, right? It's the cab driver from the Bronx who left money to green every borough. It's about the accountant on Staten Island who left money to plant trees. It's that whole community that gives us power as a community, right? So it's back to that notion of by New Yorkers for New Yorkers.
Thank you for highlighting that. Absolutely. So I do have some great questions that I'd love to get to from our attendees. And please, everyone, if you want to ask questions, it's not too late. You can put it in the chat. But we do have a question here. What is better for organizations, giving them money or giving them food donations? You know, you often see people are collecting cans of food. And what do you have to say to that? Who would like to answer that one?
Sounds like Chantella.
Sure. So again, I think the really great thing about giving money is that you're able to allow those organizations who know their community, who know the clients that they are actually providing food to, they're able to purchase what people will eat. So they're able to purchase food based on choice, and it eliminates the waste of having, food donations that maybe are not utilized. They're also able to purchase fresh produce in a timely manner so that it can be safely stored, distributed, and used. So I think the financial donations are really important in thinking about food safety, thinking about choice, and thinking about limiting waste. And I know that there are lots of organizations that do accept food donations, and they do typically have very specific kind of rules as well as ideas about what they may be collecting in season or what they may need. But also I think financial donations, kind of going back to donating through a vehicle like the trust, you're really able to pool those finances with other donors and make a larger impact.
That's fantastic. Thank you. I love what you made, the point you made, how people can come and pick the kind of food that is right for their culture, for who they are, for their history, and be able to do so with pride. So, that was a really meaningful point on that. Thank you. We have another question from Linda. Wanted to know, do you ever find that you have either the opportunity or ability to help organizations leverage your support to enhance their overall reach fundraising capability? So I think we have a couple of questions that we do have some nonprofits that are here with us today, and finding out more maybe about how they can work with you and you with them. So maybe one of you could speak to that.
So I can take that. So I think that two things that you should know about the trust, which our peers are other foundations, and often other foundations look to us to be the seal of approval for an organization or a project. So if you get a grant from the trust, it may not be a very large grant, but the fact that you made it through awful gatekeepers like myself and Chantella, and got a thumbs up and resounding yes, you're going to do good with this money, is usually assigned to a lot of other nonprofits and donors that, all right, this organization is worth supporting. So just by default, somewhat, Linda, a grant from the trust helps do that. And then more specifically, while not relating to our discussion on food, we do have a technical assistance program where we do provide modest grants to organizations to help them as they figure out some of their operations related work, which can include fundraising, and one can apply for that as well just through our regular grant process.
Wonderful.
Can I add on to that? That works on the donor advised fund side too. I was involved with a very small, just getting started organization. I thought it would be great for them to be able to have that seal of approval. So I learned that they had previously gotten one grant from the Community Trust. I thought, great, I was planning to give them money anyway. I'll do it through the Community Trust. So hopefully that amplifies their visibility in the donor world and maybe to people at the trust.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Been made, so hope it works.
Thank you for that. You know, it is true, as I said earlier before, there is concerns that your giving is going to the right place. And so many people have heard of, you know, nightmare stories where, you know, money isn't going in the right place. And, you know, if you really want to help New Yorkers, you want to make sure that where you're donating is helping New Yorkers. So that's really critical. In fact, the wonderful resource that Peter mentioned about the giving guide for helping hungry New Yorkers, we put the link in the chat. And also it will be in the email tomorrow. So tomorrow you'll get an email with contact information of the New York Community Trust, being able to contact them, as well as this gift guide, giving guide, and other information as well tomorrow. We also recording this, so you'll be able to get that. And we really hope that you will share this with as many in your community as possible. It takes a village to be able to feed a village. And, you know, we so much appreciate, I want to thank Irfan, Chantella, Anna and Peter, Levin, Amy, thank you so much for being here and for shedding a light on this critical issue of hunger and helping each one of us to become a warrior in the war to overcome and eradicate it from our local neighborhoods and our friends and brothers and sisters. So I want to thank you all for being here with us today and sharing your time with us. And give. It is a blessing to those you give to, and it is a blessing to yourself. This is the season for giving and an opportunity to kick that off for eternity, really. So I wish you all a wonderful day. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Levin. Thanks, Irfan and Chantella.
Thank you all.
Happy Giving Tuesday.
Yes. Bye-bye, all.